Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Daily Friend Show. I'm your host, Nicholas Lorimer, and I'm going to try to get through this whole episode without collapsing into a coughing fit, because unfortunately one struck me just before the show. But anyway, I am here today with Mr. Hermann Pretorius. Hermann, how's it going, man?
It's going okay. I mean, one of the stories will really reflect on why it's a sort of a weird time. The biometric data, it just threw me when I read it this morning. So it's a weird day, but it's going all right.
And of course, we're also joined by Mr. Terence Corrigan. Terence, how are you this afternoon, sir?
Yeah, it's like that Phil Collins song. It's another day for you and me in paradise.
I thought Paradise is pretty good PR, if this is what it actually is like. Anyway, okay, so let's get into our first story for today. And Herman, I'm going to give you a great opportunity to do some shameless, selfish self-promotion here.
Yes.
The Freedom Advocacy Network, which you are what's your title? Director? Head of?
Yeah, Managing Director.
Managing Director. Is taking the EFF to court. Can you tell us a little bit about how this came about, where it came from, and what's the issue here?
Yeah, so my title is more impressive than it actually is. It's a legal term, so I have to stick to it. So FAN got involved in this issue at the end of last year. So we all know that there was the municipal elections on the 1st of November last year, where across the country municipal councils and were elected. You know, in big cities, we followed the elections with some eagerness to see who would be mayor of Tshwane and Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni and Cape Town and the like. But in one small municipality in the northwest, something happened that was quite odd. That was that the IEC made a calculation error. Now, I'm not one of those people that go on, waxing diabolical about South Africa's elections being on the verge of being absolutely, corrupt and a ton of rubbish. I mean, in every election, you will have some irregularities and stuff like that. And it's a human system and it's politics. You get some errors and you get some mischief. But in this instance, the IEC made a mistake. Yeah. In this instance, the IEC made quite a blatant, clear calculation error. In the Motswere, Ramotswere Moiloa municipality in the northwest, near Zeerust, the EFF was supposed to receive 5 council seats. And a small local party, the FFD, the Forum for Democrats, was supposed to get 1 council seat. But because the IEC allocated like 204 ballots incorrectly, there was this calculation error, it ended up allocating 6 seats to the EFF and 0 seats to the FFD. Now, usually when you pick up a calculation error like that, according to law, you've got a few days after the election to make the IEC aware of this, and then they will step in. The problem was the FFD, becoming aware of this calculation error, contacted the IEC and for a month couldn't get any reply from them. So then they reached out to FAN, the Freedom Advocacy Network, to say, we need help. We need a legal team, and part of what FAN does is it has this legal team that is willing to, at the drop of a hat, do good stuff. And FAN's legal team then, on behalf of the FFD, contacted the IEC and got a response, more than the FFD got from the IEC. And that's, of course, the first worrying point. If a party participating in an election spots an error, surely one would expect that the IEC would take that seriously and investigate. But for a month, the FFD could get nowhere. And only when FAN got involved, the FFD actually got the answer they wanted. The IEC admitted their mistake, sent through the new and final results to the municipal manager and the speaker of the council, saying the EFF should have 5 seats allocated to it, and the FFD should have 1 seat allocated to it. Now, this municipality is dominated by the ANC. It is not a marginal municipality in any way. But the principle still became quite worrying and quite clear.
just to be clear on that one, the ANC has 23 out of 37 seats, though, 61% of the vote.
Yes, so there's no threat to who governs there, but the principle at stake is one that we will likely be seeing over the coming few years. Coalition politics is the next step for South Africa on all levels of government. We're already seeing that in the municipalities, and we're likely to see it in the provinces in 2024, possibly even the country. And if you look at Nelson Mandela Bay over the last 5 years, you see how 1 or 2 seats can really determine where who sits in government, who gets to make the ideological decisions. So 1 seat in this small municipality in the Northwest province might seem, an irrelevance, but the principle is one that will likely determine a lot of South Africa's political future when it comes to the integrity and stability of government. Where seats are incorrectly allocated, it can start making a big difference, perhaps not in this municipality, but on a larger scale. But beside the fact of coalition politics being affected by one change here, another change there, the people of the Ramotswere Moiloa municipality voted in significant enough numbers for the Forum for Democrats to get a seat in council, and they did not. That is just a plain violation of free and fair elections. You have the right to stand for election and be voted for, and you have the right to vote for a party of your choice if it then meets the necessary limit for representation. Then it deserves that representation, and if it doesn't get it, your constitutional rights are being violated. So the principle here was quite important in various ways, and FAN got involved. The IEC acknowledged its mistake, but we are now at the end of March 2022, and that seat is still in the hands of the EFF, despite all possible exhaustion of other avenues. The municipal manager and the speaker of that local council have refused to swear in the FFD councillor and have the EFF relieve one of its councillors of its duty. It's illegitimate councillors. So that council is sitting, but improperly constituted. It's possible that many of the decisions that council now makes might be suspect, but the problem here is that we are still now 5 or 6 months after the event, and all possible establishment entities have failed to actually stand up for democracy here. The IEC did not do their job. The municipal manager representing the civil service did not do its job. The speaker did not do his job. And when FAN was in court a few weeks ago, the judge president of the Northwest essentially just punted for the sideline, punted for touch, saying, no, but first we must know what the IEC and what the municipal manager and what the speaker of the council says. That date for those people to make their submissions, ordered by the Northwest High Court, has now passed, and surprised those people, not even the IEC, have submitted their position to the court in something as important and as telling and as straightforward, cut and dried as this. So tomorrow, FAN will be in court to fight for this nonsense of an injustice, perhaps minute, perhaps remote, but important nonetheless, to be righted. And it's very, very telling that the EFF opposes FAN's application to have a simple calculating error corrected. And I think it says a lot. If the establishment, the IEC, can't be bothered to speak to a party, to correspond to a party initially, that's a concern. If the civil service can't be bothered to fix a mistake, that's a concern. And if a party like the EFF clearly turns on the idea of free and fair elections, well, what else would one expect from them? But that surely is concerning. And FAN is going to make that right. It might not seem big, but you only need the small slides to actually get that avalanche going.
So a really interesting story, this actually, and I think it shows sort of the way that South Africa has this almost 2-tier of the way that the country works. If this has happened in Joburg, I get the feeling that there would be an awful lot more fuss about it. In fact, it would probably be on headlines for weeks. But the fact that this happened in a municipality right on the border with Botswana, that very few people could ever tell you where it was, even those who live in the Northwest. We're seeing what I think Hermann has very well put out here seems to be a complete ignoring, a complete violation of the democratic principle here. We have rules, we have elections, and they're just not being followed. What's so concerning, though, is just that the lack of response. Terence, what do you make of this? I mean, it's one thing to say, no, you guys are wrong. We didn't make a mistake. This is stop barking up the wrong tree. It's another thing to just pretend like no one is making a fuss about this.
Well, I'll go one step further. You say this happened in Johannesburg. I wonder if this had happened in Philadelphia, if there wouldn't be a righteous outrage on South African Twitter about it.
That's probably true.
We have a curious a sense of commitment to American electoral processes that I often find to be lacking in respect of our own. Hermann mentioned a number of you have a right to the following things, but I think there's also a reasonable expectation that that the processes will work correctly. And yeah, it absolutely beggars belief that, well, first of all, that you could sort of miscalculate on 200 odd votes. 1 or 2 you can understand. 200 is starting to look like gross incompetence or something else. But then to dig your heels and say, well, okay, that's tough luck. No, this, I would say it's not only important, but it's not a small thing. It's the corruption of the will of a significant number of voters. The corruption of the will of one voter is bad enough. But yes, no, and I think I second some of the comments that have been made in the chat about good work and keep it up. You definitely have your fans.
Yes, as long as we have more than that, you don't want to have only fans. But something that
you naughty boy, you.
I don't know what you mean. Something that I also have to point out here is, if it wasn't for FAN, this issue would have been completely ignored, off the radar. And FAN isn't a big hitter. I mean, we're essentially 5 guys in a walkie-talkie in a way, supported by the IRR, but with minimal effort, an injustice like this was put on the table, put on with the role of the High Court. And it just goes to show that never underestimate what can be achieved with merely poking where people don't want you to scratch for more information about what's going on in the country. A lot can be achieved. And if it weren't for FAN and our handful of supporters, one of them being the IRR, our largest one being the IRR, then this injustice, small as it might seem, but fundamental as it is, would have gone unnoticed, unchallenged, unaddressed. And that would be quite, for all the reasons Terence laid out, that would be tragic and quite frustrating. Democracy it's the color with which we try to paint a better picture. If the paint itself and the color itself is off, you don't even have a chance to get a good picture out of that in the future.
Just on a sort of side tangent here, that's sort of vaguely related. What's quite interesting about this case to me is the way in which, in practice, when you see something that might look like the electoral system being defrauded or manipulated, and I'm not saying that's necessarily what happened here, it's very difficult to tell the difference between a deliberate messing around with the system and incompetence. And this is actually a good example of why sheer incompetence, even if it's completely benign and doesn't have any ill intention, is so dangerous for the electoral system, because it creates this perception that there might be some funny business going on. Now, we've still got a court case and stuff to go and things, but Terence, go ahead, please.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, I think it was BBC ran this very interesting piece about how to steal an election. It went through sort of the five top strategies, capturing the mediating institutions, ballot stuffing, and then one of them was pure chaos. And they used Nigeria as an example, where you simply can't tell what's happened because everything is just in too much of a mess.
Right.
And eventually, insanity becomes the system.
Nick, if I can punt a last moment for Fan here, and I think exactly because of that, you do need these oversight bodies. It's always sad when the watchman needs a watchman, when the watchdog needs a watchdog, and in a sense, I hope that's not Novichok or something, Nick. But in a sense, the thing here is that if citizens aren't going to step up and assist entities like FAN, like the IRR, like DRSA, then we're blowing the retreat when there's everything left on the field to play for. All is not lost. It sounds awful, but the moment we give up is the moment we really, really allow things to go to hell. So I would urge people, go to FAN's website, go to our Facebook page, find out what's going on with these things, and please support us. These things need, in this country, the watchdogs needs a watchdog. And if we're not going to do it ourselves, we can kiss all our hopes goodbye.
And I just want to make a last point there, just following on from what I said earlier. This is actually why the IEC needs to be held to a very high standard, that chaos point exactly. Even if the IEC is filled entirely with good, well-meaning people, if they mess up the election by just not, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, you are going to damage the country and the country's democratic structure in a profound way. So, and the reason I'm concerned about this is I think the last two elections have seen a marked decrease in the efficiency and quality of the IEC's administration. What I'd recommend is anyone here who has some spare time when it comes to elections, be an observer, be an IEC official. You can volunteer to get involved, or volunteer for the political party you support, and go to the voting stations and do what you can to oversee those processes and make sure that they're free and fair, because only by doing that can we make sure that our democracy remains intact. Anyway, on to our next topic, which I see has already been requested that we discuss it in the comments. ICASA, which is the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, has published some draft regulations which will require mobile networks to collect subscriber biometric data. The idea here is that, something along the lines of, and they haven't specified what this biometric data would be. It might be as simple as fingerprints, but it might be something like voice recognition, facial recognition, iris scans, something like that. That data be collected by MTN, Vodacom, Cell C, whoever, and then linked to your SIM card. Now, why are they doing this? They say it's because they need to make sure that the practice of SIM swapping and other crimes associated like that is prevented. So I've actually had this happen to me. I haven't been caught by it, but I've had someone try it on me, which is where someone phones you and says, hey, we have this problem with, I can't remember what it was. We have some sort of issue. We need to swap your SIM card, and here's how you do it. And what they try and do basically is get control of your cell phone number. And once they've done that, they then will try and use that to get into your bank account or something. You know how a lot of services these days online require a one-time PIN SMS to your number. So these guys will try and sort of hijack your stuff using that process. So it's a real concern. And South Africa has an enormous amount of fraud, often which involves cell phones. And in fact, an attempt to stamp out this and stamp out terrorism is why we enacted things like RICA and FICA to kind of make sure that you had to register a lot of information regarding your cell phones and your bank accounts, all that kind of stuff. But obviously it's not working, or at least ICASA doesn't think it's working well enough, and that's why we need this new piece of legislation. So, Terence, let me start with you. Just your initial thoughts. Do you think this would actually solve the problem? Is there some other nefarious thing that could go on here? Is this just more paperwork and busy work for people? What's your take on this?
My sense is that anytime you surrender personal information, there is always a danger. That's just a general principle, and sometimes it's necessary to surrender that information. But I remember a couple of years ago there was that big password leak, people's Yahoo or Gmail passwords are compromised, LinkedIn, and sometimes it got more serious. Bank account details. These are all protected systems.
Right. On that point, this even happened in the US, where something like a couple million people's social security number, which is the big ID number in the US, got stolen by Chinese hackers and was sold freely on the internet.
Yeah, look, and sometimes it becomes very embarrassing. Was that like adult dating site, Red Velvet or something? And like it exposed who was, stepping out for a bit of after hours entertainment.
Yeah, there was exactly. There was a website. What was it called? Ashley Madison. I watched a documentary.
Yes.
It was set up to help facilitate affairs, and the information and messages of every single user got leaked by that website, which, as you can imagine, caused some drama.
Yeah, it's that a top tip. You maybe don't want your nearest and dearest knowing about that. But okay, so I think that there is always a first principles risk associated with this. The other thing, exactly how would this be done? I suppose in principle, if you could link it to banks, because they can, they take increasingly take fingerprints to verify your identity when you go to interact with your account.
But I suspect that when you go to buy a new SIM card or something, you'd have to put your fingerprints in or something at the MTN shop.
Yeah. Look, I think that it will. It offers interesting possibilities to deal with fraud and illegal transactions. But I do offer two cautions. First of all, it does come with that risk of this being misappropriated, and I think that you will find that people of nefarious intentions will possibly have, will possibly be able to find their way around this. You never know that information might be hacked or false information submitted. I think that as far as the fraud aspect goes, there is absolutely no substitute for being up to date with what you're exposed to. But yeah, this is I think, though, a brave new world where privacy is a receding concept. And that does concern me.
So, Herman, when you saw the story, you were a bit taken by it. Tell us your thoughts on it.
I think what it illustrates to me is always there's no such thing as a free lunch. I mean, everything there has a cost and a benefit, and one can understand that during for extreme circumstances like war, us classic liberals and people who care about freedom might actually say, right, there might be some compromise here, as long as it's temporary, but also as long as it's proportional. And what bugs me so much about this is I'm just struck by the lack of proportionality. I don't know of a single South African who wakes up going, oh my word, those SIM swap frauds. But the exchange for, let's be generous, for a very serious crime that affects thousands of people every year, you are now going to violate the bodily privacy and integrity of millions. I just think the proportionality just is so jarringly out of whack here. And the fact that ICASA can, this is draft regulation stage. I mean, this isn't some early consideration. ICASA means this. They mean business by this. If it goes, I don't know if it goes through, but somewhere it is deeply depressing for me that somewhere in ICASA someone didn't go, hang on, guys, perhaps let's not go full China on this. Perhaps let's just have some limit. And I mean, Section 36 of the Constitution makes this point in 36(1) subsection E, I think, where there's this idea of having, is there a less restrictive way to achieve the purpose? And I think there is. If you look at scams like this, you will always find them targeting people who are vulnerable intellectually, emotionally, socially.
Is that what they targeted me, Herman?
Yes, well, I didn't want to say it. But the thing is, if you look at these schemes, it's always a situation of badly worded emails, and people laugh at these badly worded emails saying, ha, ha, ha. But the point is that forms part of the scam filter, is if someone can't see the bad setup of the con, they are perfectly positioned to be conned. So how about we just make vulnerable people less vulnerable, better education, improve their social circumstances, upward social mobility? That's less restrictive to address this. And perhaps I want to end with this part of the discussion with a quote by C.S. Lewis, who I put right up there with the Constitution, perhaps a bit higher. Of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. It would be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep, his cupidity may at some point be satiated, but those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience. And I think that is probably one of the most amazing quotes that we can, in this time of mad erosion of personal liberty, is something we can give serious thought to.
So I just want to make an additional point on the practicality of this. If you go to Bree Street taxi rank, you can, within about 5 minutes down the street there, I know there's some dudes who sell FECAD SIM cards, or was it Rika? I can't remember. One of the two. SIM cards where it's registered basically in someone else's name, and people buy these to use them in scams and for crime and that kind of thing. The problem in South Africa is that we don't have law enforcement that can properly take down these syndicates that do these kind of things, that pull these scams and stuff. So it doesn't matter what system you put in. You can put in the most elaborate, complex, powerful regulatory system in place. I guarantee you within a month, those same guys will be selling SIM cards with fake biometric data on it that you can use to commit crimes with. So if we don't fix the basics, adding another law is not really going to fix anything here. Do you have any final thoughts, Terence?
Well, just lest anyone think that bureaucratic inefficiency about presenting oneself as a state thing. I received a letter, still snail mail from my bank, saying that there was a problem with my account and I must phone this for more information. So I phoned, and it was a genuine number. No, they couldn't find anything wrong with my account. So I said, all right, fine, must have been an error. A week later, I got another letter saying, well, we're very sorry that you haven't contacted us. We now are like putting a hold on your account. So I phoned them back and I said, oh, yes, there's a block on your account. Can you tell me what the problem is? No, we can't. We don't know. And I said, okay, you say for more information, phone this number. I'm phoning this number, and I'm not getting the more information that I'm looking at. Is there a problem here?
Yeah, no. I said, anyway, I just noticed that we're actually almost close to time here. So I just want to very briefly brush over our last story here. Mangaung Metro, which is the area around Bloemfontein, has had a large part of the city without water for a week, which is quite something. There's also been service delivery protests now related to this because, as you can imagine, people are rather upset that they're going to have to walk a couple of kilometers to get water from a tanker. Crazy stuff. Herman, do you think that this is a portent of the end times for our infrastructure in South Africa's biggest cities, Joburg, Durban, Pretoria?
I think so. I think you can see it as the chickens coming home to roost. This is 20 years. Okay, let's be kind. This is 10 to 15 years of infrastructural neglect coming home to roost. Eskom has no more assets left to loot. SAA is no. There's a book, I think, Nothing Left to Loot, and we are reaching that stage where the carcass is so picked dry that even the ants, us poor ants, can't find anything. So it's really a question of chickens coming home to roost. It's all gone. It's all gone. And if the change doesn't come soon and dramatically, we are looking at full failed state territory.
Terence?
Yeah, no, this is dreadful. And as Herman says, this is a problem that's been a long time in coming. I read something interesting by Ed Stoddard at the Daily Maverick the other day, saying that the government has put out this video, 10 reasons to invest in South Africa. And one of them is a world-class infrastructure. That's just beyond parody.
Yeah. What makes this even worse, actually, is that apparently someone died in the process to fix the pipe and restore the water.
Yeah.
Now, it's not clear why that happened, but that shouldn't be happening. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. We hope you found the show interesting. We will, of course, be back with you next week on the Daily Fringe Show. Please like the video, subscribe to it, leave us ratings on the podcast apps. We'd really appreciate that. And also, if you want to support the IRR, which is the great sort of octopus at the center of this classical liberal network with its tendrils all over the place, please SMS your name to 32823. We'll call you back to sign you up as a friend of the Institute. Anyway, thank you very much, and we hope you have a most excellent day. Cheers.